A few weeks back, following the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, stories started circulating about a secret weapon. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt described Venezuelan soldiers bleeding from the nose, vomiting blood, unable to stand after some kind of sonic device was deployed. You know, the kind of thing you'd normally see at a Metallica concert, except more organized. Trump confirmed the U.S. used weapons nobody else knows about, which is exactly what you'd say whether you had a death ray or just really good flashbangs. The beauty is, nobody can prove you're lying. Here's the thing, the United States has built secret weapons before, real ones. They worked, and none of them looked like sci-fi nonsense. Hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you enjoy the video. Now let's get into the voodoo technology. The government decided to build a weapon that could end the world, and they figured the best way to do that was to not tell anybody. Smart. They built entire cities in the middle of nowhere. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Hanford, Washington, Los Alamos, New Mexico, tens of thousands of people working on something, and most had no idea what.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
You're a machinist in Tennessee making parts, and your supervisor can't tell you what they're for. Is this important? Very. Will it help us win the war? Can't say. It's like working for Apple, except instead of a new iPhone, you're building the apocalypse. Harry Truman, the vice president, didn't know the atomic bomb existed until FDR died and he became president. Day one on the job. Congratulations, here's the nuclear program. Most people get a desk and a stapler. Trinity test in the New Mexico desert, flash brighter than the sun, then Hiroshima, then Nagasaki. But the bomb was almost beside the point. What they really built was a system for keeping massive secrets. Thousands of people, multiple cities, years of work, and nobody talked. Well, at least not right away. Before satellites, if you wanted to know what the Soviets were building, you had to fly over and look. The U-2 did this at 70,000 feet, higher than anything could shoot, for a while. Then on May 1st, 1960, Francis Gary Powers got shot down over Russia. The U.S. immediately said it was a weather plane that drifted off course. A weather plane, with cameras that could read newspapers from the edge of space, flying over the Soviet Union. Khrushchev waited a few days, then wheeled out the wreckage, the pilot, and the spy cameras. Oh, and the photos of Soviet military bases. Eisenhower had to admit we'd been lying. Yeah, we were spying. We've actually been doing it for years. But by the time they shot one down, we'd already photographed everything. It's like getting caught shoplifting after you've already sold everything on eBay. The SR-71 was the solution to getting shot down. Don't be there when the missile arrives. Mach 3, 80,000 feet. The Soviets would scramble jets, launch missiles, and by the time anything got close, the Blackbird was having lunch in a different country. The CIA built it first as the A-12. Single seat, slightly smaller, even faster. Then the Air Force wanted their own version, so Lockheed stretched it, added a second seat, called it the SR-71. Classic government efficiency, build the same plane twice. The titanium skin got so hot that the fuel tanks leaked on the ground, just leaked, dripping jet fuel on the runway. But in the air, the metal expanded from the heat and sealed perfectly, so it only worked at Mach 3. The Blackbird wasn't invisible. Soviet radar saw it every time. They just couldn't do anything about it. Stealth aircraft aren't invisible. They just don't show up on radar until they're close enough to ruin your day. The F-117 Nighthawk, the B-2 Spirit, those weird angular shapes that look like folded paper. The F-117 debuted in the Gulf War. Iraq had Soviet air defense systems top of the line, very expensive, and they didn't see it coming. Sound familiar? Radar operators staring at screens showing nothing, then suddenly bridges are exploding. By the time they figured out something was in the air, the F-117 was heading home. Stealth didn't make radar obsolete, it just made it useless, which is basically the same thing. In the 1950s, somebody at the Pentagon said, "What if we made a nuclear-powered cruise missile?" And nobody stopped them. Project Pluto, a ramjet engine powered by an unshielded nuclear reactor flying at Mach 3 at treetop level. They tested it in Nevada. The Tory 2C reactor ran for 5 minutes at full power. It worked perfectly. Unfortunately, the project didn't make it any further than the successful ground testing. But the ground testing all but verified what could have been. And that was the problem. The missile could fly for weeks carrying nuclear warheads. It would also irradiate everything underneath it. The exhaust was radioactive. The sonic boom at low altitude would flatten buildings. So even without arming the warheads, the missile itself was a weapon, and you couldn't shoot it down. The engineers called it the flying crowbar because it was indestructible. If you knocked it out of the sky, you just spread radioactive debris over your own country. They canceled it in 1964, not because it didn't work, because it did. The guys who built enough nukes to end the world looked at Project Pluto and said, "This is too much." In 1968, a Soviet submarine sank in the Pacific, 3 miles down. The CIA wanted it. So they built a ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer. Told everyone it was mining manganese nodules, which is definitely a real thing and not at all suspicious. Howard Hughes was supposedly funding it, which made sense because he was famous for weird projects. The ship had a giant claw designed to grab a submarine from 3 miles underwater. They sailed out directly over the wreck and tried to lift it. The sub broke apart on the way up, but they got pieces. What pieces, what they found, still classified. Either they recovered something valuable, or they spent hundreds of millions fishing up trash, and they're too embarrassed to say which. The whole thing stayed secret for years. The CIA built a fake mining company, a custom ship, and pulled off a heist in international waters. GPS was built so nuclear missiles could hit targets accurately. The military wanted bombs to land on specific buildings instead of somewhere in this neighborhood, so they put satellites in orbit. It became operational in the 1990s. Suddenly, bombs that used to miss by hundreds of feet could hit specific windows. Cruise missiles making turns in Baghdad, hitting exact rooms. Laser-guided bombs dropping through ventilation shafts. Then they gave it to civilians. Now it's in your phone. You use it to find target. The same technology that guides Tomahawk missiles tells you there's traffic on the highway. Tomahawk cruise missiles navigate. They look at the terrain, figure out where they are, and adjust course. During the Gulf War, people watched them on CNN making right turns in downtown Baghdad. If a missile can read a map and navigate city streets, your air defenses are decorative. All those SAM sites, all that radar, useless against something that flies low and knows where it's going. You can launch them from ships 1,000 miles away. No pilots at risk. Just point, click, and something explodes on the other side of the world an hour later. Nuclear subs carry enough missiles to end civilization. Ohio-class submarines loaded with Trident missiles, each missile with multiple warheads, each warhead capable of leveling a city. And they're just out there, underwater, silent, invisible. The whole point is you can't find them all. You could destroy every missile silo, catch every bomber on the ground, and the subs are still out there, somewhere, in the ocean, which is very large. They patrol for months. Nobody knows where they are. That's the job. Be invisible, carry doomsday weapons, hope you never use them. The submarine that prevents a war by existing is worth more than every bomb we've ever dropped. Drones started as spy cameras. The Predator would fly around, take pictures, fly home. Boring but useful. Then someone strapped a Hellfire missile to one. Now you've got pilots in Nevada flying combat missions over Afghanistan, watching targets on screens, waiting for hours, then pushing a button and watching the explosion in real time. That gray thermal footage, the crosshairs, the explosion, all from 7,000 miles away. No American casualties, no shot-down pilots on the news, just results. Drones weren't supposed to revolutionize warfare. They were cameras. But if you can watch someone for 20 hours and then kill them without risking a single American life, that becomes very popular very quickly. Stuxnet was a computer virus that destroyed physical equipment. It infected Iranian nuclear facilities and made the centrifuges spin themselves to death. No bombs, no commandos, just code. Iranian engineers watching centrifuges fail over and over. The equipment was destroying itself and nobody could figure out why. Because the problem wasn't mechanical, it was digital. It was probably the first real cyber weapon, and it proved you could wreck infrastructure with software. Now every major power has cyber warfare divisions. The rules are being written by politicians who think the internet is a series of tubes. Stuxnet showed that air-gapped networks aren't secure. Someone walks in with a USB drive and suddenly your centrifuges are committing suicide. H.A.A.R.P is a research facility in Alaska with antennas pointed at the sky. It studies the ionosphere. That's it. It's not controlling weather or beaming mind control. It's atmospheric science that happens to look menacing in YouTube videos. If H.A.A.R.P could control weather, Alaska wouldn't be frozen half the year. Energy weapons exist, sort of. Experimental systems that disable drones or blind sensors. They can't vaporize tanks. Mostly, they're good at setting things on fire slowly, which you can also do with a magnifying glass. The injuries described, bleeding from the nose, vomiting, that's consistent with explosions and flashbangs, shock waves, stuff that's been around forever. Combine that with the most elite operators on the planet, and it's surprising if they weren't also crapping in their pants. A Russian official said the real weapon was the dollar. He's not wrong. The U.S. used signals intelligence, financial tracking, surveillance networks, and people on the inside who flipped. Satellite imagery, bank transfers, informants. The usual high-profile raid stuff. One final possibility about this superweapon that induced incapacitative ear bleeding and gut vomiting. Maybe the damn thing is real. This is Steel Mallard. See you in the next one.